Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike. And before you get too sucked into this awesome interview, do us both a favor and like, subscribe, and share this amazing piece of content, because I am here with the one, the only, Jake Edwards.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm here. I'm ready to, talk on this podcast.
And talk we shall. First up on the word-speaking docket, Jake, what's your favorite movie line that you like to quote apropos of nothing?
Oh, dear. I think that, because I grew up just spouting off all sorts of random crap, so now it's a very long history of it. I think that probably one of the most said lines that I say apropos of nothing comes from the movie So I Married an Axe Murderer, because that is one of my family's favorite movies of all time. And it's got to be either something that the Scottish father says or something like that. For the life of me, I can't think of what it is, but I know that it's definitely something from that movie. Just like, look at the size of that boy's head. Or he'd move now. Just put on a terrible Scottish accent and start screaming.
That was great, yeah. But I mean, it was the exact same terrible Scottish accent that Mike Myers put on, so you nailed it. Good job.
Yeah.
Well, from great lines to great dates, what was your first date movie?
Ooh, what is my first date movie? Okay, I think that I know what the first one was. It was... and I'm going to kind of cheat and look it up just to make sure that I know the name, but it was a play on Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. She's the Man, 2006.
Oh, yeah.
With Amanda Bynes. And it was because, it was 2006? That's so... Okay, so, no, that does make sense. When I was a freshman in high school, the spring play was Twelfth Night, and I got cast in it. And so I went out on a date with a lady, and we went to go see She's the Man because it's the same play. And I wanted to see it.
It was studying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're studying for your role.
Yeah, I got to play the Channing Tatum part, and the rest is history.
Nailed it. I would only believe that you nailed it. Did the date go as well as the play, or was one of them particularly better than the other?
I mean, the date was fine. It was with like an old friend of mine, and she and I, got off really well together. But I mean, I turned out gay, so it didn't turn out like that great of a first date. It was also like freshman year of high school, so I can't imagine anyone is really there's probably someone out there with the like Archie comics upbringing that has like a perfect childhood and dates all the girls and becomes the homecoming king and all that, but that wasn't me. I don't feel like many people have that. So
if you don't mind burrowing down that subject a little bit, at the time, did you know that you were gay, or were you still unsure or assuming that you were straight?
I don't think that even at that time, like, I definitely knew that I was attracted to guys, but it was definitely lots of like still pretty deep in the closet at that point.
To yourself, or just in general? Like, did you think that you were maybe I'm still straight, or was it like, okay, I like guys, but we gotta put up this facade because social constructs?
Definitely a little bit of both, I would say. I was definitely kind of trying. It isn't so much like a full-blown, like Lifetime special, like struggling with my own sexuality, but there was definitely plenty of like, no, I totally like. I like girls, sure. I'm not
You're just
gay.
Gaslighting yourself.
Yeah,
like, women,
or like getting into an argument with someone and just being like, "Oh, I'm not gay," but like, really, why does anyone care? That kind of a thing.
That's great. Was she a friend that like kind of maybe knew, or was she hopeful that, oh, like this guy that we're friends with, maybe this is a thing, or it was a bit like kind of she was a bit crestfallen?
I can't imagine she was that crestfallen. I think that I had a lot more. I love you. I like
She
you like
looked
a
at your
brother.
suspenders selection and she's like, this
Yeah,
guy,
exactly.
this
I think
guy,
just I had a lot more girlfriends that we were better as like really good
yeah.
friends to enough to like actually start disappointing women.
Well, that's well, slightly sad, very sweet, and not a particularly bitter variety. So that's
Yeah,
nice.
so I got that going for me. There's another one.
All right, from that great first date to a favorite first meal. That's not even a transition. I'm just poorly explaining the question. Screw it. Jake Edwards, what's your favorite meal to make just for yourself, assuming cost and time are not relevant factors?
I am quite partial to pesto, spaghetti, and steak.
Ooh.
Growing up, my my mother had about 5 meals she could make, and they were repeated throughout the week, compared to my father's two. And so, growing up,
Did he
we
do weekends and she did he do weekends and she did weekdays? That's
no, 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 no. He did it when she was gone, and that consisted of beef and beans, which is just ground beef, salt, and green beans cooked together. Um,
sounds like a tried and true winner.
Oh yeah, it actually like if you've got like a salt tooth, you like it's whatever you call that. Uh,
If you have a salt tooth.
yeah, if you like salt, it's basically like, all right, great, this is a salty
No,
meal.
but it's like I've never heard somebody say that before, but 100% like there are times in my life where I'm like I could really use something salty. And I'm
Yeah,
like I am 100% there for it. So I get what you mean. I've just never heard it put into words before. Love it, stealing it, using it forever. Thank you.
I am notorious for taking a well-known phrase, like an idiom or some kind of a just a local like whatever, and just completely
Mhm.
butchering it. Like I know it's a sweet tooth. There's got to be some actual name out there for someone who likes salty food. Like there just has to be.
It's yeah.
But
But
anyway,
anyway.
so growing up, like my favorite meal growing up is my mom would make like spaghetti and then put pesto in it, and it usually came with like chicken or steak. And growing up, we called it green noo-noos. I think that that's something that even my dad's father or my dad's mom would make because she makes it too. And so because of how silly that like and little kitty that name is, it's always stuck. So I always go for steak and green noo-noos if I'm going to make my own thing for myself.
That sounds awesome.
It's
It's like
really
one of the
simple. Like you can either do
yeah.
it out of a can or like a jar of the pesto, or you can make it yourself and it tastes, way better. But like either one's going to work. And it's not really particularly hard.
Yeah, I like it because it is like you're saying it's pretty easy, the amount of instructions and ingredients are pretty low. But it's also awesome because it's like one of those things that I'm not that culinarily, catered, but it's one of those things that is not like that common. So it is kind of like its own experience. So you're not going to have it and then compare it to something else, it seems like.
Yeah, it's not like a lot of typical comfort food things that you probably hear all the time. Oh, I love, I don't know, grilled cheese or mac and cheese
Mm,
is like a thing
yeah.
that someone would go to.
Yeah. And rightfully so, they're great. But like
Yeah,
this is also good, but in its own kind of it's got its own like little niche corner that is it's very much reserved in its own. It's beautiful.
I mean, it's
I,
good.
have have you shown it to people? Like have you wined and dined somebody and like made them said home comfort dish, or is that something just reserved for yourself?
No, I've made it before. Again, it's really easy, so it's a good go-to. And
What's the response been from people that have tried it in your experience? Have they been like flabbergasted, mildly disgusted? What's the average kind of go-to response?
as like, I've, it's very muted. It's not so much that like people are disgusted by it. It's just so kind of like, oh yeah, this is good. That it just feels very normal to me.
Yeah, it's like you drew a picture for your folks and you're not like, Michelangelo. And so they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh yeah, it's great." And they put it on the fridge and you're like, "Yeah, you would have said that if I pooed on the piece of paper though, wouldn't you?"
It
I'm
would.
sus. I see you.
It is 100% a fridge recipe. That like
Yeah.
it's not offensive enough for anyone to be like, ugh, and it's not like special enough for really anyone that doesn't have like some kind of like nostalgia about it to go like, oh yes,
Mhm.
that finally.
What is your favorite non-exercise thing that you have to force yourself to do?
Bills? I don't know.
Like for instance, for me, it's writing. I when I get in the pocket, I love writing, but like looking at it, it's so daunting. It's like I have to literally push myself to like it's I think I would rather go to the gym than like sit down and write, even though one of them's in my house and free, and the other one is, 5 miles away, costs money. I have to have other people gawk at me as I like trundle around a treadmill.
Yeah. I think I've got like maybe two answers. The
All right.
first one is like anything to do with my car. I do not give a shit about cars. I don't care. It's a vehicle to get me from point A to point B. If I can like have my phone play through it, like I am such a 2005 Midwestern child, I guess, that as long as I can hear music that I choose through my car, I'm pretty good. I also would like it to be able to tell me where to go, but I just hook up my phone. So anything to do with the car, like getting the oil changed, even taking it and getting the like washing my car or something, it's just
Mm.
it's such a pain. I know I have to do it. Um, and then the other thing, because you said the thing about writing, and it made me think of like something that I have to struggle, like something that I know that I want to do, but I have to kind of struggle and push myself to do. And that's reading, like actually taking time to
Oh
read a
yeah,
book.
totally.
Um, and I love reading. Like if I get into a book, I really get into. Like I just
I
started
ex-
at the beginning of this week. I started reading it because I like Stephen King, and I don't know. I was thinking about like watching the movies again,
mhm.
and I was like, you know, what, I'll just read the book. And yeah, I'm consuming it quite voraciously. But every other time, I just am like, oh,
Yeah. No, I absolutely know what you mean about reading. That's another one of those that I'm like, once you get into it, once the book gets good, it's great. But like up until that point, it's just like you might as well be like carrying sandbags up a hill. It's just like,
yeah, exactly.
why?
Especially if you're reading a book that like you've sat down, you're like, okay, I'm going to read. And then you
Mm,
start reading some book that you picked up, and it's not a like particularly thrilling book. It's not it.
yeah.
The cover did not help you make this decision at all, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
just kind
that's
of
me.
boring.
That's me with Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Like I wanted to read it, and I got like 3 or 4 chapters in, and I was just like, then I think somebody recommended another book, or like there was another book just laying around. I picked it up and started reading. I was like, "Oh, this is what it's supposed to be like," and I immediately donated that book to the library. It's like, get out of here, Brave New World. Be brave with somebody else. I got shit to enjoy.
Honestly, I think of all the books like that as just textbooks. Maybe it's because Brave New World was like assigned reading in high school, but all of them
Yeah,
just like, oh, I don't like it. Well, it's because it's a fucking textbook. That's why.
yeah.
And
There's some other book that I talked to somebody recently that is just like it's that to the max. Like it's what like people think about War and Peace. I haven't read War and Peace, but from people that have read it, I've been told that War and Peace is actually while it's huge, it is compelling. It's just like a
mhm.
monolith of like a book to approach. But there's some book that's one of those ones. Oh, it's so good. And it's like it's so divisive because it is to some people it is that good, but for the rest of us, it's like no, this is just like fuck me, grown city. Like just it's just like reading down. It's like reading for all you Bible thumpers out there. It's like oh, there's some books in the Old Testament that are just literally books of names of this guy was this guy's son, who was that guy's son, who was this guy's son. It's like that, but for like 400 pages. It's like, is this
I
gonna
know what it.
do anything ever?
I don't know what book you're necessarily talking about, but I know what book made me feel that way. And I was reading all the Lord of the Rings books, and on like I love Lord of the Rings. I love the movies. It's an interesting storyline when you summarize it. But actually going
Sure.
through and reading it's. I sit here and I'm like, you know what? This old man, this old Welsh man, put a lot of time and effort into this, and he did a really good job. Good job, old linguist professor. But damn, it is rough. It's like,
I think I very much do agree. I think the Hobbit is the better book
yes.
series because it is one. It's a lot more refined. I think it was more made for children anyway when he's writing it,
Mhm.
but it's a lot more succinct. Where Lord of the Rings, it is like one of the Tolkien problems that like talking to like you can tell who's a Tolkien head and who loves Tolkien by what their response is to this next statement, which is Tolkien couldn't help himself but embellish on his settings. Tolkien heads don't see that. They're like, what are you talking about? It's amazing. That's the best part of it. The people that read Tolkien appreciate him are like, yeah, that's definitely his weakest point. Because he cannot stop himself from telling you what every leaf in like the whole forest looks like.
Yeah.
It definitely is like one of his biggest issues.
And see, I respect him so much because I think that whenever I consume some piece of media, or especially like a story, whether like however whatever form that comes in, I respect the story. Like I really do kind of try to see to the bone of the story, like what is the story they're trying to tell? Like, okay, the hero is here, there, and then we end up there. And it's like, can I respect that? Is it a good story that you're telling? And is it like compelling? And I believe that like Tolkien had a really good baseline story. It doesn't matter if it was complicated or new or anything like that. He was doing a good job, and he created a world, and he had a major impact, and I respect him for it. But like in the 21st century, reading that stuff out like in the old context of someone trying to like specifically create like an ode to Celtic sagas and stuff like that, and this like very ancient way of like describing stories in a high British manner, like it is kind of boring. And a lot of times I don't, who's that idiot character in Lord of the Rings that like the hobbits just run into and he appears? Tom Bombadil. People go nuts for Tom Bombadil. I suffered through all however many pages of Tom Bombadil just thinking this is so useless. I do not care. Is he like
he's
a
the most
symbol for mirth?
character? Yeah.
What is he?
Yeah, it's such a nothing burger. It's a great, delicious, cool looking nothing burger, but there is just nothing going on there. It is just, yeah. I think, but to his credit, I think some of the time when he did that, I want to believe that Tolkien was just like telling his editors to fuck off, because there's so many different interactions. Like the best one is the reason there are two spellings of dwarf or dwarfs, sorry, the plural, is because Tolkien basically helped write the then dictionary, and they had it as, I believe they had it as DWARFS in the dictionary, and then when he wrote it in his book, he wrote dwarves DWARVES. And like one of his editors came back and they're like, yeah, this word's misspelled. He's like, they're like, it's supposed to be this. He goes, I wrote that word. That word exists because of me. Fuck you, I'm writing it this way. So like, there's
didn't he do something similar
about...
with like elves? Didn't he do the same thing with that?
He might have, I don't know, but it's so funny to me that he just like takes umbrage, and there's these moments that if you look back and do some digging, that Tolkien is just this like catty old sumbitch who's just like, we're doing it my way. It's like, okay, dude, I guess. Yeah, I wrote the dictionary. I am, god of words, deal with it. It's like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, man. But it makes me think that moments like that, they come back and, they're like, but Tom Bombadil, he's the most important. They're like, fine, fuck it. And they just like walk, they just like leave the lunch meeting. They're like, screw it, I tried. Speaking of lunch meetings, who's someone you've never met, alive or dead, that you'd like to have lunch with?
I'd like to have lunch with. I think that I would like to have lunch with Edgar Allan Poe.
Solid answer. Where are you taking him? What are you eating? And what do you want to talk? What do you want to ask him?
I'm going to take him to a bar because the man's a drunk, and we're going to have to drink anyway. So
he's dead. I don't need to worry about preventing his alcoholism. We can just run headlong into it.
Exactly. He's like, well, you're going to die of alcoholism twice? We'll stay out of Baltimore. Fine. Uh, but like, he was never respected in his own time, first of all. So I don't know if he found out in death what it was, but I'd like to tell him, like, people really like your stuff. Have a drink. I don't know, he just seemed interesting. I remember doing like a book report on him once, and he was just like this very horribly drunk man. And I was just like, all right, let's do that. I feel like
he was an 1800s poetic version of Charles Bukowski. Just
exactly.
Complete alcoholic. Very good with words. Underappreciated during their own time.
And you'd be like, I guess that it's a different time, but your cousin, why? Like, real young. Real young. Weird thing to do, man. That or Alfred Hitchcock. I love Alfred Hitchcock. I think I would have to take him to a really lecherous alcoholics. Place, yeah.
Either way, we getting drinks.
There will be drinks had.
What's your favorite non-traditional curse word?
And this is like not a real get in trouble in school curse word, right?
The way I think it's best described is called a minced oath. So it's usually cover up, like instead of son of a bitch, son of a monkey, mother trucker instead of motherfucker, like stuff like that. But it can be far more. For example, some of the other ones that have been good is that like people have said muppet, balls, bellend. Like it doesn't necessarily have to not be a swear word. It's more like a non-traditional swear word if it is a swear word. But it can also be something that is a stand-in that you'll just like say either in good company or just say as like a personal expletive.
I think that it's probably Judas Priest because in place of Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's because I remember hearing my mom say that all the time, which is funny because she has never pulled a punch on a curse word in her life. She's like a sailor on leave. My entire side of that family does. And that's probably where I have such a filthy mouth. But every once in a while, she would just be like, Judas Priest. And I was like, okay. I don't know what that is. It took me so long.
She was just a big fan of the band and like really wanted to listen to a track at that point.
Which I just cannot believe.
That would be amazing if that was like the secret thing, is that she was just like a huge fan of Judas Priest.
I remember the first time I heard Judas Priest, I was like maybe 12 or 13. And I was just like, these guys suck. Why does anyone listen to this? Or use their name as like some kind of a thing. And I liked heavy metal music. I was like, all right, yeah, let's rock. And no, these guys are just like, this is so light bullshit.
What inanimate object would you be best friends with were it sentient?
I would probably be best friends with my television. I don't know. Mostly because I use it so often. That's hard. Like I was trying to think on this, and I know what if an inanimate object came to life, which one would hate me the most, and that's probably one of my pens. Because I'll try to journal every once in a while, and I'll like go between all these different pens, and I always I write like an idiot. I just like have my face completely on the page, and I'm trying to like fit as many words into one line as possible in cursive with like some stupid ballpoint pen that I spent way too much money on. This thing is heavy. I've got a weapon with me sometimes, and it always cramps up my hand, and I always get mad at the pen. And I'm just like, why are you doing this? And it's like, you're the one writing this way. Why are you white knuckling this pen?
Do you also not do like like thumb, pointer finger, either side? Like, how do you hold a pen? Can you, how well a picture can you paint here?
I think that if you were to take a look at, I took like drawing in art classes when I was little. And so if you get like a book on drawing or art, usually they'll have like some kind of a picture someone drew of their own hand with a pen in it. And so if I'm looking at it now, like my thumb and my forefinger touch on the top, and then it's resting on my middle finger on the
Yeah.
bottom. And if you were to look at the point, it's sort of like this triangle shape.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I do think that is the way you're supposed to do it. I don't know about other people, but the way I do it like is like a freaking caveman with like no opposable digits. I take I've got the thumb, pointer, and middle finger on top, pressing down into my ring finger. I'm just like, yeah, it's like the way I write. So that isn't surprising to me. I still do occasionally get annoyed at pens, but it's usually more like, God, I really wish I learned in like, second grade how to actually like write properly as opposed to like, just making it my own thing and just like probably ruining my hand for all eternity.
I don't know. I think
Thank
that,
God computers came along.
putting a turning your hand into like a bird claw is fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Do you have a life hack that you'd like to share with the class to better improve their living situations?
Oh man. No, I'm the one that needs life hacks. I have no reason or no like I have no right to be telling other people how to live their life.
Well, not how to
I
live their life, but like a good way to like kind of,
or like a
boost
trick.
productivity or yeah, a little trick.
No, I have horrible productivity skills. And the worst part is I'll actually look up like tips and stuff and just proceed
Hmm.
not to do them. Like I just don't like, oh, that's so much work. Like who's sitting here like getting all these different colored notepads and sticky notes and different pens and highlighters and stuff? Oh, I couldn't do that at all.
The
It's so
one that drives me
tedious.
crazy is the DIY. You're just flaring this up for me, so I can't help but talk about it. Those like DIY channels where like, oh, you can make this thing for yourself, and you're just like
Oh
the
God.
amount of time it took you to watch the video, not even do it in real life, even if you had all the supplies, but just to watch the video. It's like I could have just gone out and bought one of these. Like, like the
100%.
thing you're making is like I get it as like a fun project. Like if you enjoy arts and crafts, and you just like making shit to make shit because you find that stuff enjoyable. Good on you. You live your best life. But like the ones that are like, I feel like a lot of channels are like, see, it's so much cheaper and like more blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's not. It takes more time. Probably took more time to buy, and that's if you make it right the way you're doing it the first time, which us, just general morons out in the world aren't going to be able to do. Like, stop.
I
Stop pretending
100%
like this is
agree.
like a feasible thing. It's so stupid.
The worst thing is that those videos, like if you're on Facebook and you just encounter one of those like pages, it's got like 50 of those little tips and tricks in one video that you like, I'll get sucked in and watch it, and it ticks me off. Each one, I don't want to get canceled, but seriously, no one is so poor that they need these tips and tricks. Like, because a lot
No.
of times they end up being like this, oh, if you can't afford this, do this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're putting string through a bottle cap and like doing this to dredge up like a tiki torch. I'm like, you don't need a tiki torch. No one needs a
Yeah.
tiki torch.
Nobody needs a tiki torch.
And like, it makes your entire house look like you're an oversized borrower to me. Like you have to scavenge for all of your accessories, and you found creative ways to like make a seat cushion out of someone's discarded like apple peeler or something. And but you're a normal human being sized person. You're not a tiny little person, so it's not quaint. It's just kind of like, why don't you
Yeah.
go to the 99-cent store?
Yeah.
You could have bought this for very, very cheap. The 99-cent store
Yeah.
has everything. Just go there. It's already been turned into plastic. Like it's already a bad thing for the environment. Just pick it up instead of
Yeah. You hear that, Dollar Tree? Free plugs.
yeah,
Courtesy
exactly.
of Passionate People, Preposterous Peeps, and J.K. Edwards and Co. Speaking of 99-cent store, you know what they sell there is condiments. So if you were a condiment, which do you think you'd be?
Which do I? Oh man, there's obviously the pull and push and pull between like what I want to be and what I think I would be.
All
And
right, give me give me each one in the set order.
well, I kind of just decided that they're the same, so it doesn't really matter. And I've decided that I'm whole grain mustard.
Wow.
Hmm.
Why are you whole grain mustard?
Because that's the condiment that came to mind immediately. And I decided to stick with my instinct. And I love whole grain mustard. Whole grain mustard is amazing. And I don't care if anyone else likes it. I like it, and I found out how you make it the other day on in some TikTok video, and apparently there used to be like a mustard jar is not just something that had mustard in it. It was like literally the fermentation pickling process that you made mustard from, and it was
Hmm.
fascinating to me, and it seemed really really easy. Um, and man, I just
And then he went and looked up a DIY channel. Was like, fuck it, and went to a dollar store and bought whole grain mustard
no.
instead of spending the 4 weeks to make it.
I refuse to believe that you should be making fermented things in an apartment because
Fact.
that feels like a I have a home kind of
Yeah,
activity.
that's what, like, not to gatekeep, but I absolutely agree. As another renter, like, that's not something you do unless you own the property in which you reside. You just
Or
can't.
or you know exactly how to cover up that smell because something like more or less mutating in your home is going to have a smell. And
Yeah.
so I don't trust myself to be able to cover that smell, and I don't know if I want to smell that smell, so I won't do it.
What's a job at some point in your life you wanted to pursue but are very glad you didn't?
At one point, I wanted to be a vet, and I'm glad that I didn't because I have since, known some vets. One of there was a woman that my fiance had knew or like lived with or something like that, and she was training to be a vet. And I don't know if all vets have to go through this, but she was like being a hardcore vet. She was like with farm animals and regular animals and I don't know, like zoo animals, like everything vet. And just
Uh-huh.
the stories I heard and just what I know about animals, I no. I like animals. I don't like animals enough to be like elbow deep in them. Um,
You like to keep it professional?
yeah, exactly. I'm not going to take an animal out on a nice seafood dinner beforehand, so I'll just keep it top line.
When did you want to, when in your life were you looking at being a vet? Was this something that, like wee little Jedward was thinking of? Was this something, like you're in high school? At what time period of your life?
No, this was like when I was a little kid. I
A
never
wee
ever
little lad.
pursued this. Yeah, I was like, oh, it'd be cool to be a vet. I like animals and
Yeah.
all
I
that
have a
stuff.
dog. I like that. I'd like to hang out with dogs all
Yeah, exactly.
day. All right, I'm gonna throw you a hypothetical.
Okay.
You're going out to a party and you want to look extra. Other than the normal garb and fanfare, what accessory do you add to your ensemble to really stand out?
Hmm. The thing I've done in the past, which isn't really as much of an accessory or really all that out there, is put on like serious hooker makeup. Um, and most of the time, this is in reference to like a Halloween party. But I've gone to some Halloween parties where I did not put in the effort for any kind of costume. But I
Yeah.
did put a little bit of extra effort into putting on some kind of like makeup thing because I used to produce videos for a YouTube channel that was like makeup tutorials. And while I don't really use makeup very much in my own life, I learned a couple of things from it. And so I will very, very shoddily put on some like eyeliner, some like mascara, and some like eyeshadow, and then just ruin my mouth with lipstick. And pictures as the night goes on usually tend to look more and more disheveled, which kind of is in a way what I'm going for. Like the one in particular that I can think of is that I went as a witch one year, which consisted of
Mm,
a witch's hat and makeup, and then just like comfortable clothes that I was going to okay drinking in for the rest of the night. And
mhm.
oh man, I was like I would reapply my lipstick, but not with a mirror and not with any kind of care. I would just like whip it out and be like, I bought purple lipstick, put it on where I thought my lips were, and just kept it. And by the end of the night, it was bad.
You're just in purple face.
It wasn't so much purple face, but it did look like I was
The winner of a pie eating contest.
Something like that. Like very Violet Beauregard lips.
That's awesome.
I
Well,
thought
that
that I had
sounds
a
like you
little
look.
mystique to myself.
What life lesson do you wish you learned sooner?
Go to bed at a reasonable hour.
It's fact.
I've, I mean, like I have a very bad problem with insomnia, and I think that it probably has a lot more to do with um, just depression periods in my life, and not
Mm-hmm.
really. I think that like an honest answer is to seek like mental health treatment earlier. I by no means am like someone who like suffers from a serious mental health problem, and not to say that there's anything wrong with people who do, but like I just think that I probably would have been a lot happier in life if I took that more seriously than I used to, or even gave it
Totally.
any thought at all. Especially
Yeah.
like going to college. Like I was in school with like the same people for K through 12 for the most part. And so even if
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't friends with all these people, I knew these people. And I even went to college with a lot of them as well. Not necessarily like a bunch of like a huge group of friends, but I knew people. But like going to off on your own for the first time, I think that you start to realize that, especially if you grew up in that kind of a situation, that your ability to really like craft a friend group or just like know people, you do have to put in the effort. And if you live most of your life where you have already put in the effort at a very young age and don't really have like a lot of like growing space within that, it can be kind of difficult to really do
Mm.
something like that. And it
Yeah.
led to a lot of um, just kind of down periods for me. And I think that that could have been remedied with a little bit more awareness of how to treat yourself right. Of
Totally. Thank you for sharing that, man.
course.
On to a potentially lighter topic. Who would you want to play you in a movie of your life? Choose, assuming you get to choose the time period of which the focal point is in your life in which this character will be playing you.
See, and I know that I keep doing this to you, but I'm not going to answer that question correctly. I'm going to say I don't want anyone to play me in my life. I do not find myself that interesting, nor anything in my life that compelling of a story to tell. Which is probably why I think I gravitate towards like science fiction and fantasy and horror writing more, because it adds some kind of element of like the fantastic to otherwise normal lives most of the time. Um, I do know that like rather than answer and say who I think that I would want to play me, I
Mm-hmm.
do know that there are like some people that I feel like I could play in a movie.
Okay.
I'm saying, and I think that like most of the time people say that I look. There's three people that I've been told that I look like in my life. The first one was Syndrome from The Incredibles, the bad guy from the first movie.
I kind of see it, just mostly in the hair, but I kind of see it.
So I've got that, and then another one was Sean Astin in the movie Rudy. I got
Okay. Yeah, you've
that for a
got
little
that,
while.
like that. What was the? I was Wow. I was gonna go way off base. I was gonna say like that's the Huskers, right? It's fucking Notre Dame. Yeah, I get that. I can kind of see that in. Yeah, I can kind of see that. To be fair, you look way better than Sean Astin did that movie. So don't put yourself that low. No offense on Sean Astin. He looked the way he was meant to look, but yeah.
I'm interested to see what you think of the next one then, because the last one I've already
Okay.
heard people say that I look like is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. No, I see that.
Is
I
that
You
better
look a
than Sean
lot. You look a
Astin?
lot. Yeah. Sean Astin just comes across as like general. Like I love Sean Astin. He's a great guy. He does great. He's a great actor. Body type and look, he comes across as like the most believable person to be cast as a Midwesterner in human history,
Yes,
and
for
like
sure.
that you're putting yourself down by like comparing yourself with looks to Sean Astin. No offense, Sean Astin. Uh, but Philip Seymour Hoffman's got a lot more mystique And depending upon the role, like his hair can get kind of flamboyant. I can kind of see that. But, like it is a bit different. Like there's certain body characteristics you have with Sean Astin that now that it's mentioned, I'm not going to be able to not see them
Hmm.
when I run into you next. But Philip Seymour Hoffman, I think it's more like the kind of gaze and hair. It's kind of like the whole syndrome thing, except less cartoony. So I
Yeah.
get that one. Those are all. You guys can't see him out there in podcast land, but I can, and I very much do agree. That's accurate. Can attest. Moving on from one absurd category to another, what poor man luxury do you still enjoy to this day?
A poor man luxury. Can you define that? Use it in a sentence.
Like mac and cheese, like Kraft mac and cheese, top ramen,
Mm, okay.
going to the arcade, like Coors Light, like something that you would get when you're broke, but also when you have money, you're still like kind of about it. So for Ashton Kutcher, apparently it's Pabst Blue Ribbon. I met small backstory so that everybody gets what the hell I'm talking about because I realized that it just came with no context. I once was dealing up in Northern California and dealt to a guy who it was a waiter at the French Laundry, which if you don't know is an immaculately expensive and audacious restaurant in Napa. And they serve only the richest and snobbiest of peoples. And Ashton Kutcher came, and I was asking the waiter, in between dealing hands, because it's 3 a.m. It's me, him, and his friend who's broke, and just dealing. And just, as I'm shuffling up the cards, I was like, hey, what's the craziest person you've served? And he thought about it for a bit, and he's just like Ashton Kutcher. I was like, oh, is he that like eccentric? He's like, oh no, he was nice, but like he came in on like a Wednesday night and asked to order off the menu and asked for a Pabst Blue Ribbon. And so he apparently walked 2 blocks down to a liquor store, bought a can of Pabst Blue Ribbon, upcharged the Ashton Kutcher like $50, which he gladly paid, and poured him a glass of or like a stein of Pabst Blue Ribbon. It's just
That
like,
is quite the story. How can you buy
yeah.
one can of beer?
I mean, he might have bought a 6-pack and put the other 5 in his car, but like
Okay.
he went and bought like one. Also, Pabst Blue Ribbon is definitely one of those beers that they, depending upon the liquor store, will sell one at a time because the people that are buying it only have $1.
Yeah.
So
It also
some
is about
shots
as
fired to the
alcoholic
hipsters
as
out
like a
there.
kombucha.
Yeah. So
My poor
that's
man's
the
luxury,
definition
though.
of
Okay. I think that mine is probably cereal. I do like cereal, and
who's
it's
your what's your top 3?
okay. So the one that I always buy is a called Great Grains. It's raisins, dates, and pecans. So it's like it is not that fascinating, but I'll tell you what, it's like eating granola, and it's really good. Um, in far of like real cereals, I think that number one is probably Captain Crunch with Crunch Berries
Respect.
for me. And growing up, like we ate cereal all the time, but my mother like really was against getting like the super like sugar cereal
Sugary.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she would get Captain Crunch for us sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
It's like it's almost like a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't like grow up with Lucky Charms and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that or Cocoa Puffs.
You
So I
didn't
think
grow
that
up with diabetes.
yeah, no. Not quite there. And I've had them and they serve their purpose.
They get you strung up enough that you can't sit down in class and learn a single thing.
See, I think that the problem I always had with Lucky Charms is that the marshmallows in them, while dehydrated, and I don't have a problem with that, they're so small and they dissolve too fast, and I don't believe they're actually fully marshmallows. I think they just must be sugar in some way. And I don't like it. I'm like, give me some real marshmallows. Give me.
Yeah.
I also have this weird thing where I love marshmallows that have like mummified marshmallows. Like if you leave a bag of marshmallows open and then
Mm.
the ones that are in front get stale, which like they usually just kind of shrivel a little bit and the air escapes them and everything. The texture
Mm.
and the quality of that is so delicious to me. Uh, it's just it's like a weird little thing of mine, I guess.
That's awesome.
And I feel like that's what Lucky Charms marshmallow should be like, you know. Not even the big ones. You could do it with the mini marshmallows too.
Well, I just found out what your Christmas present's going to be.
Perfect.
It's going to take a couple months in the making and at about $2 at the at Safeway.
Exactly. I'm a cheap date.
What? Yeah. What media, whether it be book, graphic novel, TV show, or movie, have you been putting off that is next on your to-consume list that you just can't wait to break open given the opportunity?
It's hard to answer because I think it just recently did that. And it's not like a really long thing. I had been putting off watching both the Rings of Power on Amazon and the new Game of Thrones show. And like a week or two ago, I decided to catch up, and honestly, I delayed it by like 2 weeks, so it's not even that big of a deal.
How were they?
They're good. I like so where we are right now, anyway. I think that the Rings of Power show could do to speed up a little bit. It's fine. I do not care for what goes for hobbits in this town. Like you made me care about the hobbits last time. I do not care about the hobbits right now. Tiny, stupid little rat people. But the rest of the show is fine. And it seems like they're starting to pick up the pace a little bit too. Game of Thrones is good. I like it is not the kind of monstrosity that it had become. It is definitely like kind of a little bit harkens back to the old school Game of Thrones with like why people got into it, I think. It's doing a pretty good job. There was a big like shocker moment in the last episode that I saw that like people online were getting all riled up about, and they're like, oh, they went there. It was very underwhelming to me. I was like, I mean, like I get
you were waiting for a big moment, and it was just like, bloop.
Yeah, I was expecting like the red wedding. I was like, you can't get my hopes up like that. Like this, like sure, what happened was shocking, but it was certainly not break the internet shocking. Same with the Rings of Power. People got all upset that like some elves were black, and it's like, dude, really? Seriously?
Yeah, it's funny that some racists were getting pissed off at the show. It's like, guys.
Yeah. It's the same with like the Little Mermaid crap. I'm like, do you care? Just don't see it if it matters that much to you. Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, if it helps them feel any better, it's going to suck either way. It's a Disney live-action remake. It's not going to be good.
Yeah.
Take some solace in that. You don't have to go watch a bad movie. Disney saved you some money and time. You should be appreciative.
Yes. Well, you guys don't even like Disney anymore. Why are you complaining?
Yeah, exactly. Just check out like the rest of us have. Join the party. It's great. We can watch other stuff now. All right. Well, lastly, before we throw it to commercial break, if you could have listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
I'm going to choose Dance in the Dark by Lady Gaga. It's from her, I think technically people call it her second album, although I think that really the Fame is just the Fame monster, but worse. So I'm going to call it her first album, her first studio album, whatever, the Fame monster, the one that got made her famous. It's one of the B-sides, and like, so growing up, when iTunes came out, my dad would give me like a $10 a month allowance to buy music with it, and I loved that. I obviously tried to like LimeWire shit as well, but I would always try to like get the full album if like an artist that I liked dropped something instead of just song by song. And so I ended up listening to a lot of albums over and over again, just because I didn't have that much music to listen to on like my iPod or something, and because like I had the whole thing. And "Dance in the Dark" is just such a good song, in my opinion. Just like it's got this. Okay, I don't know if you'll understand what I'm saying here, but a lot of 80s music has this like, I recorded this in a empty warehouse in like on the docks in New York City or something. and there's all this reverberation, and everything has some echo to it. And there are some like really good songs that have that in it, but I always thought that the 80s version of that echoiness wasn't very good. I don't know exactly what quality. It might be because you had the singer on reverb or too much reverb on the bass or the drums or something. But they brought it back a little bit in the 2000s and 2010s, and I think they fixed it a little bit and like took out like a lot of like the superfluous reverb and echo. And I think "Dance in the Dark" is one of the songs that to me showcases that really well. And it's just kind of this cool, weird funeral dirge of a song that is also like gets you to want to dance a little bit. And I don't know.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. And with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy this totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy "Dance in the Dark" by Lady Gaga. Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeps podcast, Song Rex. It's a long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Do you ever find yourself sitting around with an emptiness inside your soul or larger than preferred vacuous space? Would you like to change that? I thought so. Now introducing Stuff. For when you have nothing to do but important things. Stuff. For when you're lacking personality and intrigue. Stuff. When the world has taken a pickaxe-sized chunk out of your heart. Stuff. And if Stuff no longer fulfills these needs, please don't hesitate to look into our life-enhancing product, Addiction. Welcome back, everybody. So I'm here with Jake Edwards. Jake, what is the passion that you have brought with you to talk about today?
The passion that I've brought with me to talk about today. Okay, wait, what? I was supposed to bring something to this? A passion?
A passion? Like, I don't know, for some people it's, art. For some people it's riding a bike.
Okay.
For other people it's film.
I know what it is. For me, I'm most passionate about movies. I love movies. I love movies more than I love TV shows. A lot of people don't go to the movies anymore, which I think is really tragic. I will go. I'm one of those people that will go to the movie theater alone. Sometimes I prefer going alone.
Damn.
And I am in no way creative about my movie-going experience. I go, I sit on the furthest point on a row, so next to the stairs. I don't like sitting in the middle.
That's just good. That's just good deck building.
Yeah, exactly. Because I want to escape if I need to escape, and so
if the movie's bad, I don't want to step over anybody. If I need to use the bathroom, I don't want to step over anybody.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, I would like to be able to get out as quickly as possible. Yeah, it's just.
And I feel like, especially growing up, I feel as if like if I would, because growing up there wasn't like assigned seating. You just go into a movie theater and you'd sit somewhere. Usually there was an aisle seat available, and if it's not going to be a packed movie theater, especially, almost no one is going to come and ask me to move because they want to get into the aisle from my direction. So I don't have to deal with anyone like that most of the time as well. But yeah, I sit in an aisle seat. I get popcorn and a soda, and that is it. I know some people are far more creative with their movie-going orders, or even if I like to go to the Alamo, which is a fancy movie theater here in LA. For those of you listening, it's not just in LA, but there is one here, and they serve they'll serve buffalo wings and like burgers, and you can get dinner and you can get a beer and all this stuff. And while yes, that is an allure and a draw and a nice option, I don't really need that. I don't know. I've described it to myself before as sort of like it's from like going to the movies is sort of like going to church, and that like popcorn and a soda is sort of like the body.
Your communion.
Yeah, that's my communion.
The sacrament.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which
so beautiful.
when I was in college, my last year of college, I studied abroad in the fall in Prague I went to school for film, and it was a film course. And so, in the first couple in the first month, we were living in these apartments that had been found for us, and we had like people from the school that were Czech people that would live with us and like kind of make sure that we didn't get lost or murdered and stuff like that. And so
those are good things to not have happen.
Exactly. And so they invited us to a showing of Scarface at a local like bijou theater. And we had never, like, none of us there had ever been to a movie outside of the States. And so we went and found out that abroad, the very idea of eating or drinking anything during a movie in the movie theater is appalling. They are so against it. There was an ad that I saw before the movie it was a Czech ad or a French ad or something that was this, this old woman is going to her seat in the movie theater, and there's obnoxious people behind her, and they've got like popcorn and a drink and something. They're eating it, and she turns around and is like, you really shouldn't eat in the movie theater. It's not very respectful to either the artist who made this film or any of the people around you. And they like scoff her off. And then she turns around and she's got a shotgun and she just blasts at the camera. And I was like, whoa.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And I had no idea. And I got really mad. I think we were walking there. It was even before we saw this ad. And we were walking there, and I told, I think that the woman that was with us and taking us to see Scarface, her name was Nadja, and I was like, Nadja, they'll have like popcorn and like soda there, right? And she looked at me with this disgusted look on her face. She's like, what? No, you don't eat or drink while something like this is Scarface. It is a classic. You can't besmirch the art. And I was like, I went off on her. I was like, first of all, this is an American movie. And I became the worst American ever. I was like, this is an American movie. And American movies are specifically made to sell popcorn and soda and air conditioning. You cannot this is not Citizen Kane. Like, this film was not directed by Jean-Luc Godard. It is a piece of shit for you to consume, and that is it. I don't think that I forget who made that movie, but I don't think he gives a shit if I eat popcorn during this. It was made for me to eat popcorn. And I was sitting there for the first half of that movie. It's like a 3-hour-long movie. I was sitting there so upset. I just had my arms crossed. I was like, it'd make this a lot better. All of this murder and violence, popcorn and a soda. That would make this amazing. This experience would be incredible.
For the record, it was Brian De Palma.
Brian De Palma, yeah. Who's the guy that made Platoon?
Oliver
Stone.
Oliver Stone, yeah.
I think I got those two confused because in my mind I was like, it isn't the guy that did this. It was, it must have been the Platoon guy, right? No, Brian De Palma. You're right. Brian, yeah, and that makes it even better. Brian De Palma would have handed me a popcorn and a soda. Please.
Yeah, that man clearly has had lots of popcorn at lots of movie theaters and is like a film, titan.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
He's a perfect, concise, like, showing of, that's what these are for.
Yeah, and I just think that there's such a pretentiousness about it. I was like, well, it's an art. You're disrespecting the artist. I was like, yes, it is an art. I will grant you that. But that why are you holding it on this pedestal? Art does not need to be on some pedestal. Like, show it off. It has importance.
When I listen to music, I like regularly make and eat food. Doesn't mean I don't like the music any less. It's just, it's how I'm deciding to use it in that circumstance.
It just sucks all the spirit out of it, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it's also one of those things, not to like gang up on, that hipster side of art appreciation. Everybody's allowed to appreciate art the way they want. I think one of the major problems we're having with this is that the foisting of your predilections on other people. It's not like they said, oh, I'm not going to eat. I respect the art, but if you would like to, you can, although that would still be kind of, like a bit passive aggressive, but like that's, at that point, it's kind of like, okay, everybody appreciates the art the way they want. But the idea that somebody else, it's kind of like, to go down a, trepidatious rabbit hole. It's kind of like somebody being like, I don't believe in abortion. It's like, okay, that's fine. Well, you can't have him either. It's like, yeah, I believe that I should be allowed to have abortion, though. So, like, that's not the way this works. You can't
Exactly.
like, it's okay if you have something. I don't have to like abide by your something if it's literally just preference, which is what that is. Although it's a whole different bag of worms or whatever.
I think the only thing I'll concede to that kind of mentality is that for this situation, eating popcorn in a movie theater with other people, because you are in a group environment, I could see the argument being made, and that argument has been made to me, is that your chewing and eating and slurping is distracting to the other people around you. And I say to that, first of all, if you
watch a better movie.
Yeah, there's that.
If me chewing like quietly and drinking and not slurping the bottom of the can pulls you out of the movie, maybe you weren't that invested. Maybe it wasn't that good. Just throwing that out there.
I feel like unless someone is the most obnoxious consumer of food and drink in the world, like most of the time if I'm in a movie theater and there are other people eating around me, like it falls away into the background noise that doesn't exist. Like it's not that distracting. And which I think also proves your point is that like, well, if the movie's doing what it's supposed to, which is like, no matter what that is, pulling you into what they're trying to say, then you shouldn't be distracted by that.
Yeah.
Unless someone's a pig.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that, like, when you're cleaning off a half rack of ribs, like, you've got a point. But when they are, just opening their mouth, putting popcorn in, closing it, chewing with their lips closed, like, a decent human being in a public setting, and then, not getting I think they're, as long as you're not chewing with your mouth open and not trying to get that last, ounce off the bottom, you're fine. Sure. When you start doing that, obviously, regardless of scenario, you're a piece of shit. But
I feel like if you're at the bottom of your drink and you have in that drink come to the end, you get to do this, like the bottom of the barrel slurp.
Oh, you're
but you can't go back to it. Like you can't, like you get the one. Everyone is allowed their one.
Everybody gets one.
But you can't just keep on going back to the well and being like, oh, this water down here is real nice. Like, no. Fuck off.
When did you first really get introduced into... Obviously, everybody starts watching movies when they're kids. If you remember the first movie you watched, I'd love to hear what it is. But aside from that, when did it really start clicking with you that this was something that was special that you ended up wanting to go to school for? Like, at what point did that make such an impression on you? Do you remember?
There are two moments particularly that kind of ring, one a little bit stronger than the other. When I was like really little, this was back in the 90s, I think. It was
the good old days.
The good old days. Lego had released this Steven Spielberg Lego set, and it came with a camera that you could hook into your computer and like make little short films.
I think I remember this. Yeah.
And so they gave you like a little Indiana Jones set, more or less, that they had, and there was like a disc that you could put into your Windows 95 PC or whatever and try to do it. I actually did not make a single movie with it. I thought it was really cool, but like didn't do a single damn thing about it. But I think that kind of like the idea of like starting to make something, and especially with, I was a Lego kid, and so like building stuff out of that and creating a scene or something like that, I think that's where that probably originated from. As far as like really, really diving into movies themselves, I remember when Netflix first started with like the mail-in DVDs, my dad got a subscription, and I just used it to scour.
You just destroyed the Postal Service.
Lots of old movie. I remember like some of my favorite memories are actually like getting an old movie that my parents wanted to watch with me, and we would watch it, and it was fun. And I think I watched Chinatown with my mom like that. And
that's a great family film.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my parents were.
It was so captivating. He had to move to LA to really see the beauty that is Chinatown.
It's really funny because I will encounter Chinatown and landmarks from the movie around LA just driving like, oh, that's really cool. They fucking they cut off his nose there. They tried to murder a woman there. That's where she admitted that it's her daughter and her sister. Spoilers.
Yeah.
But
my favorite thing about that movie is somewhere between filming was so nuts back then, CGI was so poor, and Jack Nicholson is just so down for anything because he's such an artistic psycho that they legitimately cut his nose. That's not like a faked seed. Like they literally, that switchblade goes through his nose. He had to get surgery.
I think that. Wait, because I thought that I heard that. So it's a special switchblade, and Roman Polanski puts it into his nose, and the way it works is that when he pulls, it's supposed to like twist in some way so that it doesn't actually hurt him.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I might have to.
But I think you might be right.
Some research.
I think that maybe you're right that it actually didn't go the way it was supposed to, and it sliced his nose. And I think
that's even more amazing if Jack Nicholson was like down for like, oh yeah, we're gonna use a fake. That's cool, and then did like had a Leonardo DiCaprio moment where like got severely injured on set and just played it through like a gangster. That's amazing.
I really love that movie.
Do you remember the first movie you saw?
The very
your first exposure
movie that I can remember is there's like a couple that like jumble together a little bit. One of them is like Anastasia, like the non-Disney Disney movie.
Yeah, I think it's is it Disney or is it DreamWorks?
No, it isn't DreamWorks either. I don't think, because DreamWorks wasn't around that yet.
You're talking about the animated one, right?
Yeah, I think it's like a Don Bluth movie.
Yeah, it definitely is Don Bluth. That one I know for sure, just looking at the style.
Yeah.
It's by Fox Animated Studios.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so you're right.
So that's one that I remember. I don't actually remember being in the theater for it. I remember like driving to and from home after it. Same with Mulan.
Oh, yeah.
I think that my favorite answer to this is going to see the classic Mystery Men. I very specifically remember seeing Mystery Men in theaters because I remember it was in the summer. My brother and I and our like summer babysitter at the time, because both my parents worked, she took us to go see this, and we got there like 5 or 10 minutes late, so we didn't even see the entire thing. But just like the beginning, like cut off. And Mystery Men is a great movie. Like
fantastic.
It's also the first movie to ever use the song All Star by Smash Mouth.
Oh, is it really? That's wild.
A lot of people think it's Shrek. It's not.
I think it's like also kind of cool because I believe it was made by like MTV, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like there's so many like really random tidbits about that movie, but it is like an old school 90s banger. It's so great. There's so many great little bits about it that still, I don't want to say hold up because like the whole entire movie is campy as all hell, so it's not trying to like hold up, but it's still like, it's great in the same way like the first Austin Powers is, where it's like very self-aware, but it still just kind of works because it knows what it's doing, and it doesn't lean too hard into that, but it doesn't like shy away from it either.
It is very Austin Powers, isn't it? It's like there was an Austin Powers era of like so many movies that were just like very self-aware comedies that also sort of took themselves seriously in like a certain way. I don't know. There's just like a lot of like all of the situations that put up for gags. I don't know.
Totally. So you watch all these movies, you get hooked on Netflix when it comes out, you use it to its full ability before streaming comes along and makes the post service relax a little bit. When did you decide that you wanted to go to film school? Was there something you're looking beforehand and changed? Were you unsure and then, you just kept spending so much time watching movies and just like, that's what you wanted to be around? How did that come to pass?
I think that, so around the same time that we got the Netflix thing, I think, in I was in high school, and I was a freshman looking at what I wanted to do next year. And I'm from Iowa, and so in Des Moines, they have sort of I don't know if it's a magnet school, if you call that or not, but there's like a specific school that feeds from all of the other like high schools in the area,
Mm-hmm.
or either very specific kinds of classes. Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to put it, for specific kinds of classes. So rather than, like, if you wanted to take auto body, most
Mm-hmm.
of the high schools weren't able to offer auto body as like an actual class you can take day to day. But you
Sure.
could still sign up for it and go to this place called Central Campus, and you could take an auto body class every day, like throughout the week. And they had like, it was an old factory building that had been converted into a school, and so they had a lot of space to do this kind of stuff. So a lot of people took, auto body, different kinds of shop classes. Marine biology was something. They had like rooms full of
Damn.
tanks of fish, and they did a trip down to Florida every year to go scuba diving, and they got you scuba certified. It was a cool program. My brother and one of my cousins did it. Uh, and they had a film, TV, and radio course, and I saw that. And my freshman year, I had taken like theater class as an elective, and I decided that I wanted to do TV, radio, and film, and so I decided to sign up for that class. And the teacher that was teaching it had been teaching for like 50 years or something, and he had been, an AV club teacher since he had started, and so he kind of grew up into this. And so that class, it operated its own radio station. It got stuff put onto the like the public access channel, and so I signed up
Mm-hmm.
for that, and that really is the thing that actually made me like start thinking about going to school for it. Um, but
That's so cool.
I think that was the only kind of direction I was going to be going, because I had been like really obsessed with movies since probably at least fifth grade, and really like getting into like doing stuff, either making little films or um, just like getting really into like horror movies. Every year I'd have a Halloween party, invite friends over, and we'd watch like horror movies on AMC, and that is what got me very addicted to both old sci-fi movies like King Kong and the Planet of the Apes movies. They would show on reruns. And then I remember the first Halloween party I had, I looked to see what movie was playing, and they said, oh, at the end, like on that Friday, they were playing Halloween 2 from 1980, I think it is, or 81. And not even the first Halloween, just the second one that they were putting on television. I was like, oh, we can watch this. It's called Halloween 2. Like, it's a scary movie. Like, obviously, that's totally correct for a bunch of fifth graders to watch. Um, we should watch it. It's Halloween. I was traumatized by that movie so hard because it goes hard. It's not as scary as the first one, but they like it's in ways it's worse because
This is the one that ends with him blowing himself up in a boiler room, right?
yes. So the second one it takes place directly after the first one, same night, and so who's Jamie Lee Curtis's character, she gets taken to the hospital, and then Michael Myers hunts her down at the hospital, which honestly has one of the scariest endings of all time. Like him hunting her down through the hospital while like everyone has either been murdered in the hospital or is like gone for the
Yeah.
night is horrifying. And it's
Yeah.
also the only scene that they redid in the Rob Zombie remake that actually is also scary and holds up any kind of like worthwhileness. The first like 20 minutes of the Rob Zombie Halloween 2, I would say, are worth watching. They're very scary. But the rest of it is trash.
Yeah, like if I remember correctly, it ends with her and like the detective guy who's kind
Mm-hmm.
of been on his case the whole entire time. They end up in they've ended up blinding Mike Myers where he can't see anymore, and so they're banging pipes to turn him around and
Mm-hmm.
kind of playing Marco Polo with him in like a boiler room, and like they've released gas, and then he like the detective guy just like pulls out a lighter or something like that and blows them both up. Well, she like runs down the hall. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, I think she gets
Yeah.
away because he traps Mike Myers, and then his whole thing is like, all right, we'll go down together, boom.
Yeah. Awesome self-sacrifice.
And it also ends
I
with the song "Mr. Sandman," which is out of nowhere. Like, I get it, but also like, whoa.
Yeah. That it's kind of funny that traumatized you, because that is also the first exposure I ever had to Halloween when I was in maybe fifth or sixth grade as well, and watched it at a friend's place, and then had trouble sleeping for the better part of a week.
Yes.
So it was like the first horror movie that I ever saw, and I was just like, ah.
I think it's because it's one of the first horror movies with like a slasher in it, like a murderer rather than like a monster that I had seen.
Yeah.
And that really troubled me, I think. And like, I love horror movies to this day and still find that to be like, you can throw as many ghosts and ghouls and goblins as you want at me, and for the most part, like, you're not really going to do that much. But if it's like a psycho killer, like a real life human being with a knife, like, that shit happens. So I'm afraid of that.
It could happen to me tonight.
Exactly. Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about movies and film by the wider world?
I think that the thing that first comes to mind is that not all movies have to be good. Not all bad movies are bad, and not all good movies are that great either. Which is a very weird thing to say. I always describe like movies, there's like three kinds of movies. There's a good movie, a bad movie, and an entertaining movie. And I think that the third one, the entertaining movie, is really the one that's like important. Like, if you get something out of the movie, if you enjoy yourself, that's an entertaining movie. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is a perfectly reasonable thing to have either made, done, or experienced. A bad movie is a legitimately unredeemable thing, and it is like, it's not entertaining. It's just like, I've encountered few of these in my life that I would genuinely call bad, and they are awful.
Do you think this is a personal scale or an objective scale? Like, are there movies that you think are just objectively bad, anybody that likes them is an idiot, or is this like, to each their own kind of metric?
Yeah, I genuinely, I think that it's an objective scale for me. I think there are movies that are genuinely just bad. I remember in the first year I had moved to Los Angeles, my roommate and I had gone to this like movie festival thing that was happening on a Friday night in Hollywood. And so there was a couple of different movies that they were showing. And one of them was this movie. It was a horror movie, and it was like hillbilly exploitation kind of movie, like where the bad guys are. It was trying to do some kind of Wes Craven Last House on the Left kind of thing meets The Hills Have Eyes. And it did such a bad, disgusting job of it. It was misogynistic, rapey. Like, that's the thing that I was like disgusted by. I don't have a problem with any of these things like on their own necessarily. Like, these are all ways to tell a story and stories that can be told. The way this particular film decided to do it was the most exploitative, just do it for shock value. Like, there was nothing redeeming about this film. I walked out of it. I was like, okay, there's no reason to keep watching this. This is disgusting.
But like, what do you say to somebody if you walked out of it and your friends stayed, for instance, and you talk to them later and you're like, I hated that movie, it was so bad, and they're like, I liked it, it was full of fun. Like, what is your kind of response in circumstance like that? Is like, okay, well, we're just two different people, or is it kind of like, we need to get you to like an insane asylum, clearly something's wrong with your noggin?
I definitely would argue with them about it. It'd be like, there was nothing redeeming about that film. You need to make an argument now about what was redeeming about that film. That was a bad movie. There was nothing about that movie to me that, because I will tell you why I didn't like the movie.
Sure.
So you need to tell me, you need to change my mind.
Well, I mean, is there no room for agree to disagree, where it's like, where does like personal preference of, I like shock value, or I like, this portrayal. Like, is there, do you think for situations like that, there are kind of, obviously there are differences of preference, some people don't like horror movies, some people do, but within a genre, is there not like room for personal preference on like what they're doing? Or is this not of that kind of, or is that not like what this conversation is about, would have been about?
I think that it kind of comes down to the execution of it. I think that in this context, for instance, like I said, something like that deals with subjects of rape, like that is a horrific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and murder is obviously a horrific thing, but there's a taste level, I think, that is like I think that there is some level of tastefulness that has to be met in just to like be around. I think like this.
Mm.
It's hard to say because there are like I think I understand the other side of the coin and the other side of the argument in that yeah there are some movies that are like the splatter porn kind of things that people enjoy and there's definitely some kind of like redeemingness to that, but I feel as if a lot of really like the use of really traumatic set pieces and the way you use them really reflects on what that taste level is. If you're doing something for the sake of doing it and doing it to an illicit, it's hard. I felt that movie, the way that they had done it, was unredeemable. I didn't think I would not understand someone who thought that movie was worthwhile. I think.
Hmm.
Because I understand using it to scare people, but even most of the time when I see something like that in a movie that I find at the very least entertaining, there is some kind of reason for it within the
Yeah.
context of the story other than I'm going to disgust you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it also just is a difference with medium. Like I remember I read this nonfiction book by Stephen King, for what it's worth. It's called Dance Macabre, and it's him going into into the history of horror stories specifically, and what makes a scary story scary. And one of the sections is about like splatter, like gory, disgusting horror. There's a place for that as well. And I think that for me, something like that probably works a little better in the written form because you get to envision it yourself. And by putting it onto celluloid or, like filming something like that, I don't know. Like a lot of times it doesn't have a point, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's just the execution.
Well, moving on from something that clearly is a hot button topic, what would you say is your favorite non-obvious aspect of film and filmmaking?
So if someone has gone to like film school or something, this might sound a little bit more like elementary, but I've always really appreciated the way that, film differentiates itself from other mediums is the idea of, the montage where two images played against each other elicit a separate like mental image or reaction or emotion that is not
Like
present in the first two.
corollary crossover.
Yeah,
You're talking about the Sergei Eisenstein theory of montage.
yeah.
You can
So if you've got like a picture of a man blank faced and then put a picture of like a burger next to him and cut back, it's going to make it seem as if this man is hungry or desiring this burger, right? Nothing about the shots necessarily says that. It's just it's by putting the two shots together that you get there. And I've always thought that is incredible about film, that you can get something from nothing like that. And it's a very like simple concept, but when you see it really like masterfully done, it is that is magical to me.
Yeah.
To for like just on horror movies, I guess, and I'm in the horror movie mood. Like the reason that I think that, like The Shining is such a great movie by Stanley Kubrick is just the way that he builds a ghost story. Like you don't see things going through walls, and you don't. He creates this atmosphere and this tension that I think you can only do in film. Like you can sort of get something similar from like a book, but really in like the way that he uses the audio and the way that he even just the scene in the where Danny is on his tricycle and he encounters the two little twin girls, like he like does the cut to their murdered bodies. Like it's just such an interesting way to connect the two, and then the sound on top of it. But it's a very experimental soundtrack. There's a Polish composer that he uses that has been like used over and over and over again since then. Kind of that like there's like a sound that it sort of sounds as if like either fingers or spiders are crawling on the strings or something. Like a lot of like scary moments will use this. If you could hear it, you'd recognize it. But like it was just such a masterful way to do horror, in my opinion, and like how to tell a scary story and how to get people to feel a certain way and to like I just thought that it was so impressive, and to be able to do that through storytelling and showing, not telling, was so cool to me. And that's one of the things I love so much about the movies, that especially the movies that I gravitate towards, is that they have this like plasticity with their own medium that you don't see in everything else. Like in like just a sitcom or something, you'll just get it's very utilitarian, and they do what they need to do, and it's really about what's being said, the words. But if you get, and there's a place for that, and it works, but you can do so much more than that. Like you can get beyond the written word with film, and I think that is something that's really interesting and has always fascinated me and continues to fascinate me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of the most amazing. Like the amount of tools at your exposure, what you decide to use, what you decide to not use. It's just like it really is. Books are amazing. Never take anything away from books. Same with radio. There's so many different forms of storytelling to exist, and they are all beautiful in their own way. But I think like by and large, the best one is film. Not because of what it does, but what it can do. It is like basically the 4D model compared to everything else, which is 2 or 3D.
Yeah.
You just have so many different rooms of expression to be able to elicit your point. That is just, I believe it will, until we get like VR worlds where we can interact, and like it becomes like a form of storytelling. I think this is going to be like,
so it's
this is the
interesting
pinnacle
to me
so far.
that you bring up the VR worlds and that kind of thing, because I do not subscribe to the idea that VR storytelling is something that can really gain real life to itself. And at the risk of sounding like elitist in the kind of art world or whatever, it's because, so a couple of years ago, the company that I was working with, they were trying to figure out, okay, how do we use VR? Because it's new, it's hot, everyone likes VR, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, I don't understand. I feel as if VR has one trick. And that one trick is that you get to explore whatever you want around you. But I think that the problem with that, in terms of becoming the kind of art form that you compare to film or television or novels or songwriting or anything like that, is that by removing the agency of the author, you erase the concept. Like you cannot bring storytelling into that, because storytelling by its very definite, like by its inherentness as storytelling, is that someone has to be relaying the story. You cannot just discover a story. Like it doesn't just happen. It has to come through some lens. And so if you're telling a VR story, you have one of two options. You let the audience do whatever they want, or you have to manipulate them in some way, or let them know that the only way to see the story is to do these things, because it's a pre-created world. Like a video game, for instance, you can't finish the video game or finish the story unless you do the specific route that they're telling you to. This is the story we're telling you. You have to go this way. This is what happens. So by removing that in like a VR setting, you give the people, the audience, too much agency. You can't just do whatever you want and be able to tell a cohesive story.
Are you of the opinion then that video games are not a form of storytelling?
I don't believe that. I think that, like, because plenty of video games give you the ability to go and follow whatever pre-scripted story is within that video game. Like if you're playing Elden Ring, I'm sure that I don't really play video games, but if you play Elden Ring, I'm on the internet enough that I know of this shit. So there's a storyline. You do this, you do that, you do that, you do that, and then it ends here. And even games that are like what do you call the ones that are like the super big maps that you can kind of do whatever you want? There is within that
sandbox,
sandbox video games. There is within those storylines that you have to like march down, right? You can't just do whatever you want and create your own story. And even if you did, how would you do that in a video game? How could someone create that for you, where you get to tell your own story? I remember there used to be an old Xbox game called Fable, where that was the conceit. Make your own story, make your own character. There's a finite number of things you can do. You can't necessarily do everything, and someone has to be able to tell you what that is. An audience does not come to a piece of media to tell their story. An audience comes to a piece of media to hear a story told to them, and whether that reflects their own lives, if they see their own lives reflected in that, or what have you, like the role of the audience is non-participatory, in my opinion. Like even those video games, like you are given things to do, you're not really participating. You are doing a completely separate game. Like you're playing a game. The playing of the game gives you certain obstacles and certain objectives, and you're supposed to do that, and then you cut away to something that you have no control over and is happening to you, and that's the story, right? And those are two separate things. So you do have, I think that you very much are able to tell a story in a video game, but the audience doesn't have free will in that. Like, no audience has free will. And I think that as soon as you give an audience free will, it's no longer storytelling, it's something else. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that, and that's not to detract from...
No, it's like not, it doesn't sound like you're in any way diminishing the form. It's just saying to you that's like just not, it's something different than storytelling. It's not that it's like better or worse, it's just different.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of different, let's move on to a different topic.
Okay.
What is your preposterous peeve?
Okay. So I'd be interested to see who else has this preposterous peeve. I remember in my first day of 6th grade, or maybe the first week or something, it was different than my elementary school cafeteria, because in elementary school they basically gave you something, everyone got kind of the same thing. The lunch lady dumped it out onto your tray and you moved on. In middle school, they suddenly gave you options, which was new and special to me. And they also had like the awful for you cart, which was basically a place where you could separately pay for like candy or ice cream or something like that. So they had these like cups full of ice cream, and they would give you the cup, and then with the cup you got this wooden stick. There was like the wooden spoon that you were supposed to use to have it. I had never used this wooden stick before. And so I opened it, started using it, and when I tell you that wooden spoon drove me insane, like even talking about it now is sending a shiver down my spine. To texture of the wooden spoon on your teeth, the way it feels in your mouth, the way that it's like in my mouth, the wooden spoon, like just thinking back on it, because I will not do this if I can help it to this day. It's as if like it's not quite as solid as wood is supposed to be. I think it's just because of the nature of wood, the way that it's like pulpy and something. I don't know what it is about the wooden spoons, but it just feels pulpy in your mouth. It is awful. I hate it. And for some reason, I don't know if I was just too stupid as a like 12-year-old or what, but I didn't go and get a metal spoon. I didn't know if I was allowed to. Maybe I just didn't think of it. It was just, ugh. It's my biggest pet peeve is using wooden utensils. Wooden utensils, unless they're shellacked in some way. I really don't want to use wooden anything if I can help it. Like, when it comes to food.
That's a great story of the first time where you interacted with it. Did you then, in the following weeks, you know, when ice cream was what you desired most, did you go back and just suffer through the wooden spoon, go back and, like, you know, bring a spoon from home, find a spoon around, like a plastic spoon around the cafeteria? What was the fix for little Jedward?
I regret to inform you that I just went and continued using that spoon. I was so mad about it, too. I remember I would go sit down at the desk. I must have just been a really dumb kid. I would just sit there with my friends and be like, I hate this. Why do they give us this stupid spoon? They can't give us a plastic spoon or something? And we just furiously sit there and enjoy my, like, chocolate ice cream or something. Ugh. I was just surprised that anyone would think that that's a solution. Like, this little tongue depressor, use that to eat. Like, no!
So, is there a circumstance where you got triggered more than this? Was there, like, you know, a time when you went out eating with a date that you wanted to impress, or, you know, a family home, and then they served like wood utensils? Was you know, third grade the height of your triggeredness?
I think for the most part, it's really just middle school years that really hit that. Back in Iowa, there's also the Iowa State Fair every August, and so all of the different ways of eating food that's bad for you are high on display there. And I'm sure that, like, I probably got like even worse, like a frozen lemonade or something that they gave that wooden spoon with, and probably that set me off again. But like the sixth grade cafeteria is the one that specifically reminds me of it. Any time I see something like it.
All right, so how are you with, say, a corn dog? I mean, it's not being served with a wooden spoon, but it is on, like, basically a dowel.
A corn dog, I think, is fine, because the stick that they're using for the corn dog is not. It's like just the torque that you're using to shovel something into your mouth. You've speared it, and so you're just kind of eating it off the spear. I don't have to really, like, maybe it's a different kind of wood or something. I'm not fooling myself with this piece of wood. It's there just to hold the food, and that's it. The other thing is the tongue dispenser is trying to be something else. It's trying to be a spoon, and it is failing horrifically.
All right, so what about, like, when you go out and have sushi, what about those, like, cheapo, wow, my brain just fell apart, chopsticks? Like the ones that are, like, you pull them apart and you can feel the fibers, not the ones that are, like, you know, have been sanded down or nice and you return them to get washed, or that like you would almost like steal to take home. The ones that are just, like, clearly one use, they don't even break even. They usually, like, break at a shard at the top. Like where are you on those?
Chopsticks.
Yeah, gas station chopsticks.
They're not made of bamboo. Like, you can go to some restaurants and, like, the chopstick, like the disposable chopsticks they give you are like, they look almost like buffed. They're only connected at one point at the very end. The ones that you're talking about are, like, connected all the way down the middle, and you popsicle snap them apart. I'll admit it's a struggle. It's not as bad because I don't think the wood isn't in my mouth for the same amount of time. I feel as if chopsticks deliver food into your face a little bit quicker.
Yeah. It's a little bit more of a separate interaction. You know, they put the food in your mouth, you remove them, as opposed to being in your mouth for the digestion process.
Yeah.
And with that little deep dive, I think we're gonna head to our second ad break, but don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Jake is gonna enter the lightning round. See y'all in a bit. Have you ran out of new stuff to do, rendering your life wholly unsatisfying? Do you have too much time on hand and have no idea what to do with it? Or are you just plain over this existence and wish for a plane with more intrigue? Might I introduce you to Addiction? Addiction deals with all these problems and more. Had to meet your significant other's parents and would rather not? Addiction. Had to go to work for the third day in a row? Addiction. Rent? Why not? Addiction. Addiction cannot be held responsible for your choice of choosing to imbibe in addiction. Any and all life-destroying fallout as a result of addiction cannot be legally pinned on addiction. But you're more than welcome to try. And we are back. Jake, are you ready to enter lightning round?
The lightning round?
Oh, I am ready.
All right, put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Jake, is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
Yes.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Do the dishes.
Are soups smoothies?
Oh, no. No.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
No.
Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
The children are wrong.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Fran Drescher.
Would you rather read the cue cards while wearing the crown or live in a hovel and speak your mind?
Wear the crown.
Do you create your own thoughts, or do you just listen to them?
I create my own thoughts.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Something terrible.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Pineapple on pizza.
You come across a stranger just struck by a car. Their dying breath is this. This is very important. Please tell my wife. She's a dirty harlot. Ooh. Do you or do you not tell the dead person's wife?
I don't tell the dead person's wife. And I have a follow-up to this.
Okay.
First of all, I do want to know whether is she standing nearby or like is she readily accessible?
She is, let's say she's in the car or something like that. She's near, but she's not like, you're not going to drive to her, but she didn't overhear it. And she doesn't know that there was a message to be relayed.
If that's the case, then yeah, I'll tell her.
Okay,
I'm not going to hunt her down. I'm not hunting her down, but I'll tell her.
To tell her this shit message. Yeah. But if she's like, if it doesn't take any time out of your day.
Exactly. I'm not going out of my way to call some random woman a whore.
A harlot, technically.
Harlot, okay.
Is professional wrestling cool or lame?
Lame.
Courtesy flush or light a candle?
Light a candle.
Can I have your pickle?
No.
Assuming there was no health or global effects to worry about, would you rather it always be dark or always be light?
Dark.
Would you rather be made completely of eyeballs from the neck down, no eyelids, or be a remote-controlled Tonka truck from the neck down? You have the remote, but lack the appendages to use it, so you would have to gift it to somebody.
Eyeballs.
Brussels sprout flavored Mountain Dew or day-old lasagna milkshake?
Day-old lasagna milkshake.
Is the universe finite?
No.
Does everything happen for a reason?
No.
Would you rather have a class of 40 students for 5 months or 20 students for 10 months?
20
Either
for
way,
10.
you'll be earning the same amount of money.
20 for 10.
20 for 10? Do tomatoes belong in a fruit salad?
No. What the fuck?
Could you? That's what I said. Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1 hour time limit?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank God.
But before we move on to your prize, I, like many listeners at home, I'm sure, would like to now know, what is your favorite food that you could eat 37 of for 5 Gs?
Oh, I had said, I thought that we were talking about the one that we had talked about before, the pesto noodles. But, man, if it's easier than that, 37 in an hour? I mean, I guess that, like, you can't be asking, like, it's not like 37 Twinkies in an hour, right? So I could definitely do that.
I think it's more like, it's whatever one of your favorite foods, or like whatever number one or tied for your favorite food is, that item. So if it's like noodles, it's not a noodle, it's a portion of noodles.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I could eat a portion of 37 portions of noodles in an hour.
Holy fuck. Jesus.
Here's the thing. I couldn't do it. Like, I would not physically be able to. I would attempt it. It's not like that. It's not that I would be dissuaded.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. Absolutely correct. All right, man. Now that you've survived and given us that little tidbit, what lightning round question would you like to ask me, and in turn be asked of future guests?
Okay. So I think that my lightning round question would be, do you believe that your life will have any significant impact on the world and human history?
So my answer is wrong, but my answer is yes. Because that's my gut. That's my gut. This is a lightning round question. Not supposed to think about it. It's supposed to just like come from the heart. And my heart of hearts, I believe that my life will have a significant impact on the world. If I sit and think about it for, I don't know, 8 seconds, I know that's bullshit. But at my core, I believe that I will have an impact.
So why do you think that is?
I think it's somewhere between being raised in the 90s in the USA and having parents that believed way too much in me. That there was this distillation of just like, yeah, you're going to be awesome. And I'm just like, the core of me is still like my 8-year-old self is like, I can do anything. I'm amazing. You're all welcome. Like, you're all so lucky to be in my like, there's so much narcissism and over self like confidence in my core. On the outside, in my like awake, like my actual brain, I am terrified that I'm gonna make bad decisions. I think I'm worthless. But in like the deepest part of my body, like the epitome, the core of my center, I am just like, I'm just like the most haughty, just bold, brash sumbitch that thinks he's the most important thing to God's green earth. And that I don't know if there's enough hours in therapy to get to like for me to lose that. But that's where that comes from.
I feel like that has to be some kind of reptilian, like, stem brain thing.
Yeah.
That has kept the species going on. And depending on, like, it obviously comes out a little bit differently in each iteration of the human that gets spit out. But, like, everyone's got a little bit.
How do we as human beings make art, attempt invention or public office without that kind of hubris?
Yeah,
like I don't know that any of those things are like I am like headed towards, but like there's so much of humanity if you look at like the achievements over time and the people that make stuff today, that you have to some level of your core think that you're the shit and that what you do matters, even though time and time again evidence over the millennia says fucking no it doesn't.
Like I feel like art just inherently is this attempt at immortality. Like, even the cave paintings, like, just the hand on the wall. That is some ancient human.
Was here.
Yeah, I was here. Like that matters. Like, so? Get a job. What are you doing, ass?
I'm imagining a wife saying that to their, like, pretentious art cave husband back in, like, 10 million AD or BC or whatever like that. See, we matter. Get a job. We've got rent to pay.
We've had 13 kids die because you're too busy putting your handprints on the wall. Food.
you dick.
Yeah.
Like, I wish you died to that, saber tooth that killed our last gaggle of children. Like, they at least, like, were cute, you you large foreheaded son of a bitch.
You stole me. I did not want to be here, and yet here we are.
Oh, that was great. All right, man. As we come to a close here, is there anything you want to plug, shout outs you'd like to give, places people can find you or your content?
Nothing in particular. I mean, if you want to see all of the like inane, stupid crap that I post on Twitter, you can find me at JEdwardsII, all lowercase. I don't even know if that matters on Twitter, but yeah, I mean, that's where you can find me just rambling about stupid crap.
Do you have any friends or family you'd like to nominate to come on the podcast so they too can suffer as you have today?
Okay, so it's going to be interesting because you and I know each other through a local game shop.
Indeed.
And so I have also not heard this podcast ever in my life. So I don't know if this well has already been used, but I'm gonna say nominate Doug Lopes. Put Doug on the podcast.
He's coming on next week.
Great. I mean, he's a good guest. He's wild and a little weird.
A wild and crazy guy.
Wild and crazy guy.
Yeah, he's going to be on the podcast in a couple episodes. So, yeah, you're ahead of the game.
What can I say?
I don't know, whichever. All right, cool, man. Well, thank you, Jake, for being my guest today. And a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you. Yes, you listening at home or wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our Patreon patron, Sibeliello. And if you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just send over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, when without beans and coffee, you're mean and naughty, should you not always indulge in your addiction lest your friends' list become fiction?
What the hell?